Hi, everyone. How are you doing today? I hope you're having a nice day. So up until this point, what we've been doing is noticing where our attention is, right? And a lot of the times it's on our thought. We're thinking, right? We're noticing that we're stressed out about a math test, or that we're worried about something in future, or maybe we're just, planning the weekend or remembering something fun we did, right? The practice has been bring your attention to an anchor. Yeah, something like the breath, the gravity, that type of thing. And if you've noticed that every time, in every practice, when your mind has wandered, I have invited you to just notice that and bring it back to the anchor, right? So just let the thoughts be thoughts, and okay, here's the thoughts, and then we come back to the anchor. Today, we're actually going to do it the opposite. We're going to bring our attention, we are going to bring our attention to an anchor, but then when our thoughts come in, we're going to actually notice them, right? This allows us to kind of see what role thoughts have in our life, how we can be affected by them, manipulated by them, and how to work with them. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the practice. So I invite you to get in a mindful posture. You're upright but relaxed. And again, do whatever beginning practices help you settle your attention. So it could be, eyes closed, low gaze. It could be a couple of deep breaths. As we settle our attention, we're bringing it inward toward our body. Possibly noticing the gravity, the effect of gravity in our body. Letting our body and our attention sink into that gravity. And then, because going forward, I'd like you to have, your unique practice, what works for you. I'm going to invite you to pick one of the anchors that we've used up until now, that you found to be the most helpful or the most satisfying. So, we have gravity. If that feels good to keep your attention there, we have sound. We've done our breath, bringing attention to the sensation of the in-breath, the out-breath, the insides of the palms. So if you asked, where does your attention sort of want to land right now in order to settle? And we'll let that be your anchor. And so as you sense into that anchor, notice how it feels. Notice what's happening in your body as your attention settles. And if it's not completely settling or even settling a bit, just notice that. Yeah, it's hard to settle right now. Maybe you can notice where some tension is and you can invite that space to settle. Okay, so we're hoping to keep our attention lightly here on our anchor. But if our mind does wander to thoughts, I'm going to invite you to get curious about those thoughts. Now, when you notice you're thinking, go ahead and check it out. Like, is your thought a picture, or are you hearing a sound, so to speak? Are you hearing your thoughts? What is your thought about? Is it about the past? Is it about the future? Are you trying to figure something out, plan something, working on your homework? Just allowing yourself to be really curious about the thought. You can even label it. So maybe it's worry, or it's planning, or it's memory, or it's calculating, or it's guessing, or it's doubt. Yeah, what kind of thought are you having? And the other thing you can even notice is, does this thought have an impact on your body? Is it making you feel happier? Is it kind of scaring you? Is it making you a little more anxious? Is it neutral? So this is our practice today. And you might notice that the minute you bring your attention to the thought and get curious about it, it pops out of your mind. Okay, so then just come back to your anchor until the next thought comes. If it doesn't quickly pop out of your mind, again, take a few moments to be curious about it. And when you've learned all you needed to know, then gently bring your attention back to your anchor of breath or gravity, or whichever one you chose. Okay, so let's do that for a minute. Attention on the anchor. If it moves to thought, we get curious about thought, notice what we can, and then gently come back to our anchor. So I'll give you a few minutes for that practice. If you totally get lost in thought, that's no worries. You can stop yourself and notice what you were thinking, or you can come back to the anchor and just start again. Settle your attention a little bit on your anchor, and when your mind wanders, then investigate your thought. Okay, so wherever your attention is right now, whether it was on your anchor, or it was investigating a thought, or you were lost in thought, let's begin to come back to our space. So bringing attention back to the body, maybe wiggling the toes, moving the body a little bit, moving your neck, your head, and opening your eyes when you feel ready. And go ahead and look around, and yeah, come back to the screen when that feels right. Okay, great. So let's talk about thoughts. Yeah. Um, the biggest myth to mindfulness, the biggest assumption people have is that somehow it makes you stop your thoughts. But that's not doable. It can't happen, right? The mind thinks. It would be like me asking you to stop hearing or stop seeing or something like that. We can't stop our thoughts. So the issue is not that we're supposed to try to stop our thoughts. The issue is, what's our relationship to these thoughts? What's the purpose of thoughts? What are they doing? How do they work in our mind? And what effect do they have on us? And how can we work with them? Because when we understand them, it's easier to work with them because they're powerful. Thoughts are powerful. Okay, so let's share the screen and we'll talk about thoughts a little bit, get some information about thoughts. So now scientists say that we have between 50,000 and 80,000 thoughts a day. It's a lot of thoughts, right? It's like one every little bit more than a second, right? 95% of them are repetitive. So we're thinking pretty much the same thing over and over. And then 70 to 80% are negative. So there's that negativity bias that I'm always talking about, right? I mean, our brain's using 2/3 to look for negative stuff. So we're probably in the negative realm most of the time. A thought is just really a neural process. Basically, there's an input and stimulus from our senses, like maybe instructor says there's a math test tomorrow, or someone gives us a dirty look, or something that we forget to pay our bills, or somebody smiles at us, right? And then the neurons just form a thought, right? So, oh, I'm in trouble, or yay, this person likes me, or whatever, right? And then thoughts come in pictures and words. You might have noticed that in our practice, right? And it's all different. Could be both, could be half. I hear a lot of words. That's my thing. I hear my thoughts mostly. I do have some pictures. And then there's many types of thoughts. And this is just a small sampling of the words. But like if you're in the past, they're usually in the past, the future, or we're calculating something. Like right now, when they're kind of right now, we're calculating something, right? So if they're in the past, we're remembering, regret, those type of things. If they're in the future, we're planning, we're speculating, we're worrying. If we're calculating, we might be judging, figuring something out, doing our homework, that type of thing, Okay. So here's our challenge. If we have 50,000 thoughts, 50,000 to 80,000 a day, and they're 70 to 80% negative, we're having between 35,000 and 64,000 negative thoughts happening. That's a lot of thoughts. It's like one every 2 or 3 seconds, a lot of negative thoughts. So they're happening constantly, our thoughts. They're powerful because they affect our brain chemistry and our physiology and therefore our moods. So if you think like, oh man, it's going to rain tomorrow, it's going to be wet, it's going to be a horrible day, we feel horrible, right? And the opposite is true, right? If we think, man, this is going to be great, I'm going to do this and that, right? And everything's going to be fun, we feel better, right? So thoughts really affect our moods. I want you to know that. Now, your thoughts, each one of our thoughts, is based on our own perceptions, imaginations, and assumptions. Because when that neural blast to create a thought comes up, it's based on all our personal histories, right? It's based on what we know, how we think, how we were raised, all that kind of stuff. What that means is that these thoughts are not necessarily facts. They're based on our own personal perceptions, right? So now that doesn't mean that sometimes they're not true, but it does mean that they're colored with all of our biases and perceptions and imaginations and that type of thing. And it's tricky because they're happening so much all the time. We don't even know we're thinking. We think it's true. If we say, yeah, tomorrow's going to be a bad day, I just know, we believe that, right? We believe our thought, even though it's only an assumption based on some input we had, right? So we tend to believe these thoughts, and then we make these critical decisions in our life based on them, about people, about what we're going to do with our life, all that kind of stuff. And in that sense, we're being constantly manipulated by our thoughts. So what can we do? It's kind of a problem. We got all these thoughts. Most of them are negative. They're based on our perceptions. Man, how do we walk around every day, right? Well, can we stop our thoughts? We've already discussed that. Can't stop the thoughts. Can we change our thoughts? So actually, yeah, we can change some thoughts. But if you've ever really tried to change a thought or a belief, you realize it takes a long time, because you have to change your perception around the whole thing, and you have to get some proof, and you have to have some experiences, and then over time your thoughts change, right? So you can change them, but I mean, we're having at least 35,000 a day. How long will it take to change all those, right? So what we can do is, with mindfulness, we can be aware that we're thinking. We can notice, like we did in the practice, oh, I'm having thoughts. Let me check out those thoughts. So they're past, future, present. I'm trying to plan something. What happens is, when you watch them like a movie, then you realize that it's a story and you don't have to believe them. When you're not attached to the thought, then you don't have to feel the feeling that the thought brings up. So let me give you an example. So I'm old enough to have seen the original Jurassic Park in the movie theaters, yeah? And it was very scary. I mean, the theater was shaking every time the dinosaur walked, and it was great. And I was really scared in the movie, right? I was like, my heart, if you took my blood pressure and all that, it would have been high, respiration high. The thing was that even though I was scared, I knew I was watching a movie. I knew on some level that if I go outside, there are no dinosaurs. So my relationship to that story was way easier, even though it made me scared and it made me nervous, because there was visual inputs and sensations and sounds that told my nervous system this is scary. I could keep the distance from the story of Jurassic Park to know that there is no dinosaurs outside. So we can do this with our thoughts, right? So let's say you have a thought that, like, I'm not good at math. And that thought makes you feel bad. Maybe it makes you throw up your hands in despair. Maybe it makes you want to quit. Maybe it makes you feel bad about yourself, right? And then other thoughts come in, because they kind of impulses, right? And they go, yeah, right. Remember when that teacher said that thing about you? And remember how you flunked that one class and you never could add, right? Or whatever, right? Now, these are all thoughts. These aren't facts, right? These are thoughts based on your perceptions, your experience, your life experience, and what was being presented in front of you. So you're having a math test, the worry comes up, the thought, I'm not good at math. If you can just notice that that's a thought, even though it's made you feel bad, because I know the thoughts will affect us, right? If you can say, oh, wait a minute. Now I notice that I'm thinking, like that practice we did. The thought is like, I'm not good at math. I'm going to let that be a story. And I notice that it kind of makes me feel bad. It's about the past. I notice I'm thinking about the times when I didn't do well. I notice, and now I'm going to bring my attention back to somewhere that soothes me again, right? What happens is that thought won't have enough time to grab onto you and affect you, right? It's a practice. It takes time. But the more you work with the thoughts, the less likely you are to believe them, right? The more you see them when you're doing mindfulness practice, like, oh, there's those thoughts. Yeah, I don't really have to believe that one. I can just go forward in a different way. Again, it's a practice, because if you've been trained to believe your thoughts, it's kind of hard to untrain yourself, right? Because again, they affect your mood. So in that sense, they make you feel like it's real, like a movie, right? Because it had all that visual and audio input that it made me feel like it was real, but it was not real. Same with your thoughts. So notice your thoughts. If I'm having a thought, notice that you're having a thought about whatever, and then you'll be less likely to be attached. Okay? So let me stop this share. And yeah, so that's my talk on thought. I want to say the one last thing. So just to bring it home, right? Because when you notice you're thinking, right? Like we did in the practice, I said, oh, notice you're thinking, and then just kind of be curious about it. Then you can recognize and identify the story, right? And then you can decide if you want to invest in it. Like, I'm not good at math, I should quit, right? Because when you recognize, oh, wait, that's just a thought, that's input from my history and all those things that happen. Thoughts are not facts. I really want you to know that. Doesn't mean they're not true sometimes, but they are not facts. They're just neural impulses that come from input that happens. And so, yeah, so I would invite you this week to actually just pay attention. When you're thinking, do that little practice we did, which is, is it past? Is it future? Am I trying to figure something out? Is it a word? Is it a picture? And then is it affecting my body? What can I notice, right? And what feelings are connected to this thought? So this thought actually makes me happier, this one doesn't, that type of thing. And if it gets too overwhelming, bring your attention back to something like your breath or like gravity. Okay, so there you go, my thoughts on thoughts, my talk on thoughts, which is actually my favorite subject because it's the one that gave me the biggest distance from my anxiety. Because most of my anxiety, all of my anxiety, it is about thoughts. Okay? Okay. Thank you and see you next time.